December 11, 1944, U.S. bombers begin a raid on Germany. Suddenly, one of the pilots reports seeing several unidentified flying objects. He describes them as glowing balls of fire around the wings of the plane. Are they UFOs or something more real, more sinister? In the last years of World War II, Hitler is desperate and begins using some of the strangest weapons ever devised. Advanced technological weapons so secretive, even today, their true use remains a mystery. Hitler wants to conquer the world at any cost. This program reveals some of his most extraordinary wonder weapons, an arsenal of ingenuity and madness. In the world of Nazi technology, no idea is too fantastic to contemplate. Some of the most revolutionary and devastating weapons of the 20th century have their origins in Nazi Germany. The most notorious of these are the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first jet fighter; the V-1 flying bomb, the predecessor of today's cruise missile; and the V-2, the world's first ballistic missile, all well known to Allied forces. But these are just the tip of the iceberg. German military research begins in absolute secrecy. After World War I, German armed forces are severely reduced. Tanks, artillery, fighter, aircraft, and warships are banned. Under the Versailles Treaty, if the Allies discover the Germans developing these weapons, they have the right to attack. And so, German military research is conducted under many guises. Fighter pilots train in the gliders of flying clubs. One of Hitler's first wonder weapons is a glider, the Gigant, one of the largest aircraft ever built. The massive Gigant is towed into the air, then given an extra boost from 8 rocket engines fixed to its 180-foot wings. Revolutionary clamshell doors open to carry tanks inside. Hitler intends to use 200 of these gliders to carry 100 tanks and 20,000 troops in his planned invasion of Britain. The Gigant is first tested in February 1941. A 4-engine plane drags it into the air. As it drops its 2-ton undercarriage, the Gigant's rockets blast off. But the 40-ton Gigant is difficult to pilot. It lands on skids and can't be moved until it's jacked up on its undercarriage. But this doesn't matter, as it was intended as an assault craft. Test pilot Hanna Reich remembers how difficult it was to fly.
So it was so primitively built that it was so difficult to fly. You needed so much strength. And you see, this, what is too hard for me in a 5-minute flight, that is too hard for a strong man in a 1-hour flight. So I tried with this argument to convince Udet to stop it. But he didn't believe it, because Messerschmitt said, she is too small a little girl, but not a strong man for fighting, so don't believe her.
2 Heinkel 111 bombers are combined to create a more powerful 5-engine towing aircraft. Experimental flights are made, but the Gigant remains difficult to control. So engineers fit 6 engines to the wings of the glider. It can then fly solo over the long distances to the Russian front, transporting tanks and artillery. Gunners now form part of its 11-man crew, and the glider is fitted with a permanent undercarriage. But its crews are not sure about this new behemoth, and troops do not feel safe inside its canvas-covered frame. When used to carry fuel to North Africa, it is particularly vulnerable. Several aircraft are cut down by British fighters, exploding in balls of flame. Still, it remains in production until 1944. Rocket and jet power are more successful areas of military development in the Third Reich. Significant pioneering work is undertaken in the 1920s. One rocket-powered glider will prove itself more than 10 years later. Ernst Heinkel, a German engineering legend, is most famous for creating the HE-111 piston engine bomber, but he's also involved in experimental craft. His engineers experiment with hydrogen-propelled aircraft, then settle on a gasoline-driven jet engine. The result is the world's first jet-propelled aircraft, a shoulder-wing monoplane called the Heinkel HE-178. It makes its first successful flight on August 27, 1939, beating the British maiden flight of Frank Whittle's jet-powered Gloster E-2829 by almost 2 years. Amazingly, not a single German official shows interest. Housed in the Berlin Air Museum, an air raid reduces it to dust. When Hitler declares war on the United States, he knows he has limited ability to strike. New York is too far away for even the longest-range German bombers to reach. But several Nazi aircraft manufacturers hope to change that. Willy Messerschmitt works on another wonder weapon, the Me-264 long-range bomber. Solid fuel rockets boost its takeoff. It can then carry enough fuel to reach New York and back, a 30-hour flight. With a bomb load of nearly 7,000 pounds, this aircraft could bring America within reach of German bombing. Within the year, the Me-264 makes its first test flight, but there are problems in development, and it never sees action. Even more revolutionary is the transatlantic bomber designed by brothers Walter and Reimar Horten. With its delta wing shape, it looks like a modern-day stealth bomber. This aircraft is fitted with jet engines and reaches speeds in excess of 500 miles per hour. Armed with 4 30mm cannons and a 2,000-pound bomb load, it is ready for production. But the war ends, and so does the manufacture of both the Me-264 and the Horten bombers. The lives of millions of people living along America's East Coast are spared. With aircraft like these in Hitler's hands, New York could have suffered a blitz like London. But these bombers are just some of the wonder weapons Germany produced between 1939 and 44. In laboratories and workshops across Europe, Nazi engineers feverishly design and build machines with one aim: apocalypse for the Allies. 1942 is a turning point for Nazi military technology. Hitler's once victorious war machine has suffered its first setbacks. On the Eastern Front, a brutal winter and determined Soviet resistance halt Germany's dramatic advances. At the gates of Stalingrad, Germany is defeated. The Russians fight an increasingly effective war, and one of their finest weapons is the T-34 tank. With its sloping armor, enemy fire simply bounces off. A 76mm gun mounts its turret. Above all, simple design of the T-34 means it can be produced in mass quantities. Hitler responds with a new generation of super tanks. The 55-ton Tiger tank is the first of Hitler's armored monsters. Carrying an 88mm gun and twice the weight of the Russian T-34, it could be just the weapon Hitler is looking for. With heavier armor and a greater firepower, it should annihilate its Soviet opposition. But on the battlefield, it suffers frequent breakdowns, and it burns through fuel. The Tiger tank was Germany's answer to the Russian T-34, but it was a complicated and highly engineered tank that took longer to manufacture. The Tiger could not compete with the sheer numbers of the T-34s. One of Germany's leading engineers and tank designers is Ferdinand Porsche. He does not heed the lesson of the Tiger tank. In 1942, he designs the Maus, a 150-ton tank with armor over 13 inches thick and a 150mm gun. Prototypes reach speeds of 12 miles per hour. But the tank is so heavy, bridges are unable to support its weight. Porsche redesigns the tank to submerge in rivers. A giant snorkel tube provides air to its 6-man crew. Although development continues throughout the war, the Maus never makes the breakthrough from prototype to battle winner. From 1942 on, British and American bombers pound Germany with increasing ferocity. It looks as if air superiority will win the war. Hitler is outraged by the assault and orders his air force to counterattack. The Luftwaffe, commanded by Hermann Goering, demands cheap, high-altitude fighters. Nazi scientists are developing fighters constructed of plywood and powered by rocket engines. They hope they have the answer. Alexander Lippisch, a self-taught engineer, joined Messerschmitt in 1939. 3 years later, he is researching the rocket-powered glider Me-163, known as the Comet. Its rocket engine can power it to 26,000 feet with speeds of up to 530 miles per hour. Test pilot Heini Dittmar breaks the world speed record, hitting 620 miles an hour. But the aircraft becomes uncontrollable, and massive wing vibration almost kills Dittmar. But he manages to regain control and safely lands the aircraft. Later versions of the 163 are armed with two 20mm cannons. The fuel, a combination of methanol alcohol and hydrogen peroxide, is highly flammable. Its 3,000 pounds of thrust propel it to almost 40,000 feet in just over 3 minutes. Once airborne, the pilot has just over 4 minutes of powered flight. He must now carry out his mission in what has become a high-speed glider. All of the pilots are volunteers. Test pilot Hanna Reich recalls the experience of climbing into a comet.
I was only flying the 163A model and made 4 sharp rocket flights. And I can only tell you, it was fascinating. It was like thundering through the skies, sitting on a cannonball, like being intoxicated by speed. It was not difficult to fly it. It was only an overwhelming impression. At the end of the airfield boundary, you already reached about 500 miles per hour, and with constant speed, you were climbing up in 1.5 to 2 minutes into a height of 30,000 feet. The landing was difficult because it was aerodynamical so excellent that you had to take away the speed early enough for the landing and to touch the ground exactly at the threshold.
The Me-163 first goes into action in August 1944. Its first victim, an American B-17. In this rare footage, we see gun camera film shot from a comet. It records the moment it downs a flying fortress. Siegfried Schubert was the pilot during this successful strike, but his victory would be short-lived. Soon afterward, his comet would blow up on takeoff. In all, some 300 Me-163s are manufactured, and the design rights are sold to Japan. But because of the jet's complexity and limited numbers, it never becomes effective. Only 12 American bombers are shot down before the war ends. And when Nazi scientists design another potentially lethal weapon, it is too late to turn the tide of war. Why do Hitler's secret weapons take so long to reach the battlefield? The answer lies in the bureaucracy, egos, and mind games of Europe's most dangerous men. Transatlantic bombers, giant super tanks, jet-powered aircraft, all potential war winners for the Nazis, but they arrived too late in too few numbers. The inability to get their wonder weapons from production line into combat exposes a serious flaw in German military technology. One of the reasons stems from the very nature of the Nazi regime. Despite having brilliant scientists, Nazi Germany's economy and industry is in chaos. Factions of the military compete rather than cooperate with each other. And Hitler encourages this so that no one would become strong enough to threaten him. At the beginning of the war, however, Hitler doesn't need secret weapons. From 1939 to 1941, his armies are wildly successful. Blitzkrieg tactics overwhelm all his enemies. Hitler puts his new projects on hold, including rocket and missile research. But many of his scientists continue their work. When the war turns against him in 1942, it is too late to get many of these weapons onto the battlefield. But that doesn't stop Hitler from trying. By 1944, Allied aircraft dominate the skies over Nazi Germany. Their bombers level German cities with virtually no opposition. The Nazi regime is desperate to stem this tide of destruction. They consider all new technology, some bizarre, some even suicidal. One of their more extreme weapons is the BA-349, or the Natter. Made of wood, its 4 solid fuel boosters take this rocket-powered glider to over 45,000 feet in just 60 seconds. The takeoff climb is so violent, the pilot is expected to black out, while an automatic guidance system takes over. After he regains consciousness, he must take the aircraft into an attack dive. But the first test pilot is killed in flight. The project is dropped, and an alternative must be found. German High Command expands the development of its wonder weapons across several platforms. In 1941, work begins on German surface-to-air missiles. The Henschel HS-117 Schmetterling is the first successful surface-to-air missile designed to shoot down Allied aircraft. But by the time test flights are completed in late 1944, it's too late to put the missile into active production. The Messerschmitt Enzian has a stubby body and tail fins. It is rocket-launched along rails and then controlled by radio frequencies linked to a joystick. At long range and in difficult conditions, it is guided by a radar system used to track its target. The Rurstall X-1 guided bomb is one of the more successful air-to-surface weapons and is a predecessor of modern smart bombs. Its 4 main fins give it aerodynamic stability. The smaller fins set in the tail contain electromagnetically activated spoilers that guide it during its descent. The bomb cannot fly by itself. Its impact depends on the height at which it's dropped. The higher, the better. When released from a height of 26,000 feet, its maximum range is almost 6 miles. The entire mechanism is guided by radio control. Its progress monitored by camera mounted in the aircraft. When launched, the bomb has a flare at the back to help the bomb aimer. It can pierce 5 inches of armor plate and is a potential ship killer. The X-1 is given its first test in 1943. Furious at Italy's surrender, Hitler selects the Italian Navy as the first target for the X-1. On September 9, 12 German bombers take off. The first X-1 is launched at the battleship Roma. The remote control works perfectly. The bomb passes straight through the ship, exploding beneath it. A second X-1 explodes in the Roma's magazine. Within 40 minutes, the entire ship breaks in 2 and sinks. A few days later, the British battleship HMS Warspite is pursued. She is giving valuable support to the Allies landing at Salerno. Warspite is a prime target for the X-1. One bomber drops an X-1 that hits the middle of the battleship. It penetrates 6 decks and blows a massive hole through the entire ship. In total, 7 Allied ships are crippled by X-1s. But the X-1 is just one missile that devastates Allied shipping. The Henschel anti-ship missile HS-293 begins development in 1940. This remarkable film shows the weapon guided towards a test target on an island in the Baltic. On August 25, 1943, a Dornier 217 is armed with two air-to-surface Henschel missiles. They are rocket-powered and guided by a joystick and radio link. A later version would be equipped with a television camera in the nose. The aircraft spots a sub-hunter in the Bay of Biscay, and the missile is launched. The bomb aimer guides it to the target and scores a direct hit. The missile ignites the magazine and blows HMS Egret apart instantaneously. 222 men perish. The Germans even develop a version of the bouncing bomb. Dropped from an FW-190, the spinning weapon skips off the surface of the water until it hits its target. But one of the most extraordinary unmanned flying weapons is the Mistral project. In this weapon system, one aircraft is mounted piggyback on top of another. In one of its earliest forms, a Junkers Ju-88 is attached by two tripod struts to an FW-190. The aircraft's control systems are linked, with the pilot in the upper one. Once in the air, the struts are broken, either mechanically or with explosives. When almost 8,000 pounds of explosives are packed in the nose section, the Junkers is transformed into a flying bomb. The first operational mission for the Mistral comes on June 24, 1944. 5 take off to attack Allied shipping in the Baie de la Seine. 4 of the 5 aircraft score hits. Mistrals are now deployed against other targets. As the Allies roll toward Germany, the Nazis must destroy bridges across the Rhine. The Mistral pilot in his FW-190 lines his bomb aircraft up in a shallow dive. He then breaks free, and the unmanned aircraft slams into its target. This rare footage shows Allied aircraft shooting Mistrals on the ground and in the air. The Mistral is a highly vulnerable weapon system. Out of desperation, some remarkable ideas are born. Nazi engineering creativity is about to take aircraft and submarine design to a new level, exploring everything from vertical takeoff flying machines to radio-controlled high-powered motorboats packed with explosives. The results revolutionize war technology and elevate Nazi capacity for destruction to new heights. As Western allies and Soviet forces pound on the gates of the Third Reich, Nazi scientists continue to push the boundaries of technology. One radical idea would revolutionize flight. Rotary wing aircraft are about to move from experimental to operational. German engineers race to develop both autogyros and helicopters. This pioneering work goes back to the early 30s. Professor Heinrich Fock is at the forefront of helicopter design. By 1937, his twin-rotor FA-61 sets a height record of 8,000 feet. and a speed record of 76 miles per hour over a 12-mile course. The tail has a rudder and top-mounted stabilizers. The two rotors have pitch control that directs the craft. Test pilot Hanna Reich breaks the straight line record with a flight of 67 miles from Bremen to Berlin. 1 year later, work begins on a transport helicopter. In 1944, an advanced version of the FA-61 enters service. It is known as the FA-223, or Kite. With a more powerful engine, its ascent is controlled by adjusting the pitch of the rotor blades. Its total payload capacity is 1¼ tons, the weight of a compact car or an artillery gun. It also carries up to 12 fully equipped soldiers, making it the very first transport helicopter. 30 of these pioneering helicopters are ordered for anti-submarine reconnaissance purposes. But Allied forces launch surprise air raids against the factories. Nazi technology is reduced to ash. Another marvel of German technology is the FA-330. The 330 is not a true helicopter, but an unpowered autogyro. It is carried on the deck of a U-boat, swiftly assembled, and then towed astern to act as an observation platform. The 330 is launched by using the wind to turn the rotor, and then pushing the entire machine backwards. It is recovered by a winch and cable. Some 200 of these craft are deployed by U-boats, but very little is known about their true operational use. Scientist Anton Flettner designs the most impressive-looking of all Nazi helicopters. The FL-2A2 is a single-seat machine with open cockpit and one rotor. Its range is 185 miles. It can fly over 90 miles per hour at 10,000 feet. It is very stable, extremely maneuverable, and equipped with protection for the pilot. If the FL-2A2 had firepower, it would be the father of the attack helicopter. This is by far the most revolutionary of all Nazi helicopters. The engine is located behind the pilot's seat, clearing the pilot's field of view. 1,000 FL-2A2s are ordered, but like the FA-223, Allied raids reduce many of its factories to rubble. German submarine engineers and scientists work around the clock. Like their early successes in the air, the Germans are masters at sea for the first few years of World War II. But by 1943, Allied air power, working with the Royal Navy, used radar against the wolf packs. German U-boats are decimated by these new coordinated assaults. Their dominance of the Atlantic is threatened. Nazi naval engineers must now think beyond the conventional U-boat design. In September 1943, 3 British midget submarines called X-Craft sail into a fjord in Norway. There, they find the Tirpitz, Germany's biggest surviving battleship. The X-Craft release their side charges beneath the hull of the Tirpitz and cripple the giant ship. The brilliant raid kickstarts the Germans into devising their own submarine special forces. A force of elite divers is established to carry out secret sabotage missions using underwater craft. The Neger is a one-man submersible craft with a torpedo slung beneath it. The cockpit is covered with a plexiglass dome. It's powered by an electric motor similar to those of conventional torpedoes. The pilot uses a wrist compass to locate his target. A crude aiming device consists of a graduated scale marked on the acrylic dome. A handle in the cockpit releases the torpedo, which runs at a preset depth. The Neger sees action during Allied landings at Anzio and Normandy in 1944. But they have little success, and most are either destroyed or washed ashore. But another weapon, the Biber, is a true German midget submarine, armed with 2 torpedoes. Over 300 operate off the coast of northern France and the Netherlands from 1944 to 1945. The Biber engine runs on gasoline that gives off carbon monoxide. A breathing apparatus is given to the pilot, but the sub's atmosphere is still potentially lethal. In the last months of the war, these craft are joined by the Seehund. Bigger than the Biber, the Seehund is electronically powered, carries 2 crewmen, and is armed with 2 torpedoes. The Seehund destroys several Allied cargo ships while operating along the British and Dutch coasts. One even penetrates the Thames. But Seehunds are lost. The Germans also devise high-powered motorboats loaded with explosives, triggered by remote control. The motorboat is driven towards the target. The pilot bails out, and the craft continues on, guided by radio control. Near its target, the explosives are detonated. From 1944 on, Allied bombing takes a heavy toll on all Hitler's secret weapons. In desperation, Hitler turns to his most bizarre weapons. Weapons so secretive that many remain a mystery, even to this day. In the last months of the Third Reich, Hitler and his henchmen are desperate. They will consider any weapon against the Allies. And like the Japanese, they will even send their aircraft pilots deep into Allied territory on suicide missions. April 1945, a unit of die-hard Nazi pilots steps forward. These men are willing to sacrifice themselves for the Third Reich by ramming Allied bombers in mid-air. For 10 days, the pilots train in ramming tactics and then set off in FW-190s fitted with frontal armor. They are not called suicide pilots, but everyone knows the truth. These are one-way missions. At least 77 Nazi kamikazes go in for the kill. They hit only 8 Allied bombers. It is a tremendous waste of life and aircraft. The exercise is soon abandoned. In the final months of the war, there are reports of some of the most mysterious weapons ever released by the Nazis. It is uncertain if they are real weapons or just exotic prototypes. They are called Foo Fighters, a U.S. Air Force term for unidentified flying objects. January 1945, a New York Herald Tribune report. Mysterious Foo Fighter balls race alongside the wings of American Beaufighters flying intruder missions over Germany. Pilots have been encountering this eerie weapon for more than a month in their night flights. U.S. Army Air Force Lieutenant Donald Myers describes one of them chasing him down the valley of the Rhine. I turned to starboard, and 2 balls of fire turned with me. We were going 260 miles an hour, and the balls were keeping right up with us. These objects may have been small, remote-controlled glass fireballs. Designed by the SS, they are intended to distract Allied pilots and break up bombing formations. Other evidence suggests Nazi scientists may have been developing an even stranger aerial weapon. A CIA report from 1954 quotes a German newspaper interview with engineer and aircraft expert George Klein. Klein describes the construction of experimental flying saucers. He claims to be present in 1945 when the first piloted flying saucer takes off and reaches a speed of 1,300 miles per hour in 3 minutes. The CIA report concludes the Germans destroy the flying saucer project when Soviet troops occupy Prague. But what if the Nazis failed to destroy this work completely? Many German aviation engineers and scientists are captured by the Allies at the end of the war and brought to America. Rocket scientist Wernher von Braun is one of the most famous of the ex-Nazi scientists. He becomes the father of the U.S. space program. Could it be that former Nazi scientists are responsible for creating and then testing flying saucer-like aircraft in North America? Could they be the origin of the sudden spike in UFO sightings after 1945? If true, the U.S. government, faced with the Cold War, would have concealed these bizarre machines with the utmost secrecy. It is an amazing possibility that Hitler's search for war-winning secret weapons resulted in one of the most famous threats of the Cold War era: invasion by UFOs. Hitler's secret weapons. They began with Nazi desperation and ended at the hands of Allied determination. They revealed the true depth of German ingenuity and were reduced to rubble by British and American bombing. And though they did not stop the fall of the Third Reich, Hitler's secret weapons revolutionized modern warfare. Today, jet fighters and intercontinental missiles are at the vanguard of every major military defense system worldwide. The technology that failed to save the Nazi regime now helps the Western world protect freedom, an ironic twist to one of the greatest secrets of World War II.
Hi, I'm Dale Dye. You want to see the War Room at the History Channel? Come on. This is where it all happened.
Sir, I have Condoleezza Rice on the phone.
That's low priority. Tell Condi she'll have to make an appointment because I'm hosting VE Week right here on the History Channel.
Dale Dye hosts VE Week tonight at 8 on the History Channel.